Hello, my lovely English learners. Welcome back to our YouTube channel. I'm Evelyn, and I'm so happy you're here learning with me today. If you're new here, a very warm welcome to you. You're in exactly the right place if you want to improve your English in a calm, clear, and practical way. On this channel, we share a new English learning video every single day, so you always have something helpful to listen to and practice, even if you only have a little bit of time in your day. Today is going to feel like a friendly English learning session, just you and me, learning together step by step. And during this lesson, you will practice two very important skills at the same time. Your listening and your writing. So if you can, please take a moment to grab a pen and a piece of paper, because throughout this lesson, we're going to practice together in a very simple and natural way. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about something that many English learners dream about, something that sometimes feels difficult, but is absolutely possible. Today we're learning how to unlock your English fluency, how to move from understanding English to actually speaking it naturally and confidently in your daily life. Maybe you already know many English words. Maybe you understand English videos or conversations, but when it is your turn to speak, you pause. You hesitate, or the words don't come out as easily as you want. If that sounds familiar, please don't worry, because this is a very normal part of the learning journey. And today we're going to explore simple ways to unlock that fluency step by step. During this lesson, we'll look at real-life situations, the kind of moments you experience every day, talking about your morning, describing your plans, sharing your opinions, asking questions, and responding naturally in conversations. You will hear useful phrases, natural sentence patterns, and practical examples that will help you feel more comfortable speaking English in real life. We'll also practice together many times, because fluency doesn't come from only listening. It comes from repeating, thinking, writing, and trying again. So from time to time, I'll invite you to pause, think, write something down, or repeat a sentence out loud. These small practice moments will help your brain build real speaking confidence. Fluency is not about speaking perfect English. It's about expressing your ideas clearly, even with simple words. Even native speakers pause sometimes. Even they think while speaking. So today, instead of focusing on perfection, we're going to focus on communication, confidence, and progress. Before we begin, I have a small favor to ask you. If these lessons help you improve your English, please subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you never miss a new lesson. Your support really helps us continue creating these learning sessions for you every day. All right, take a deep breath, relax, keep your pen and paper ready, and let's begin this journey together. Slowly, clearly, and confidently as we start unlocking your English fluency. Let's start with a simple thought. Many English learners believe fluency is some kind of secret door that only a few people can open. But the truth is much simpler. Fluency is not a talent. It is not something you are born with. It is a skill that grows little by little every time you use English in real situations, Every sentence you try to say, every small idea you express, every moment you listen and respond, these are the real keys that slowly unlock your English fluency. Many learners tell themselves something like this: I will start speaking when my English becomes perfect. But this idea actually keeps the door to fluency closed, because fluency grows through speaking imperfectly at the beginning. When children learn their first language, they don't wait until their grammar is perfect. They speak with small words, short sentences, and sometimes mistakes, but they keep communicating. And that continuous communication slowly turns into natural fluency. So today, instead of thinking about difficult grammar or complicated vocabulary, we are going to focus on something much more powerful: the habit of expressing ideas. When you can share your thoughts easily, even with simple English, your confidence begins to grow. And when confidence grows, your fluency grows with it. Imagine this situation. You wake up in the morning, you stretch, you look at the clock, and you realize the day has just started. This is a perfect moment to practice English with yourself, quietly, naturally. You might say something like, I woke up a little late today, or I feel sleepy, but I need to start my day. These are simple sentences, but they train your brain to connect English with real-life moments. Now let's do a small practice exercise together. Take a moment. Think about your morning today and write 2 or 3 sentences about it in English. Don't worry about grammar too much. Just focus on expressing your idea. For example, you might write something like this: I woke up at 7. Or, I drank coffee and checked my phone. Or, I felt tired, but I was ready to start my day. Even very simple sentences like these are powerful practice. When you do this regularly, your brain slowly stops translating from your first language, and instead, it begins to think directly in English. In this moment, when your brain begins thinking in English naturally, is one of the biggest steps toward real fluency. Another important idea about fluency is speed. Many learners think fluent speakers talk very fast, but that is actually not the most important thing. Real fluency is not about speaking fast, it is about speaking smoothly. A fluent speaker can speak slowly, calmly, and still sound natural because their thoughts flow easily. Let's imagine another daily life situation. You meet a friend, or maybe a coworker, and they ask you a very common question. How was your day? This is a simple moment where fluency can grow. Instead of answering with only one word like good, you can expand your idea a little. You might say, my day was pretty good. I finished some work in the morning and later I had lunch with a friend. Notice how this answer is not complicated, but it communicates a full idea. And when you practice expanding your answers like this, you train your brain to express complete thoughts. Now let's try another small exercise. Imagine someone asks you, what did you do yesterday? Pause for a moment and write 3 sentences about yesterday. Maybe you say, yesterday I worked for a few hours. In the afternoon, I watched a video to practice English. In the evening, I relaxed and listened to music. These sentences are simple, but they build fluency step by step. One of the biggest secrets to unlocking fluency is repetition. Not boring repetition, but natural repetition in different situations. When you say similar sentence structures many times, your brain begins to remember them automatically. For example, you might practice sentences like these throughout the day. I think today will be busy. I think this lesson is helpful. I think learning English takes patience. When you repeat sentence patterns like this, your brain stores them like ready-to-use tools. Let's practice together again. Write 3 sentences that begin with the words I think. Take a moment. Maybe write something like, I think English is easier when we practice every day. I think listening helps me understand pronunciation. I think speaking slowly helps me feel more confident. This small activity may seem simple, but it trains your brain to organize ideas quickly. Another important key to fluency is learning to describe things around you. The world around you is full of opportunities to practice English, even when you are alone. Look around your room right now. Maybe you see a desk, a chair, a phone, a window. You can practice describing what you see. For example, you might say, there is a window next to my desk. My phone is on the table. The room is quiet and comfortable. These small descriptions help your brain build natural sentence structures. Let's do a short writing exercise. Describe your room in 4 simple sentences. You might write something like, my room is small but comfortable. There is a desk near the wall. I keep my books on a shelf. The window lets in natural light. These sentences may seem basic, but they are exactly the kind of language people use every day. Fluency grows when language becomes part of your daily thinking, not just something you study in a textbook. The more you connect English to real moments, the more natural it becomes. Another situation where fluency develops is when you talk about feelings. People often share how they feel during conversations, so learning to express emotions clearly can improve your fluency very quickly. For example, imagine someone asks you, how are you feeling today? Instead of saying only fine, you can expand your answer. You might say, I feel motivated today because I want to practice my English. Or, I feel a little tired, but I'm excited to learn something new. These small expansions make your speech more natural and expressive. Let's practice this idea together. Write 3 sentences about how you feel today. Maybe you say, I feel curious because I want to improve my English. I feel relaxed while listening to this lesson. I feel motivated to keep practicing. When you describe your emotions in English, you strengthen the connection between language and real thoughts. Another important step toward fluency is learning to continue speaking even when you don't know the perfect word. Many learners stop speaking completely when they forget a word, but fluent speakers often explain their idea in another way. For example, imagine you forget the word calculator. You might say, it's the small machine we use to count numbers. Even if the exact word is missing, the idea is still clear. And this ability to explain ideas differently is a powerful fluency skill. Now let's try a small imagination. Exercise. Think about an object you use every day, maybe your phone. Now describe it in 3 sentences without using the word phone. You might say, it's a small device that helps me communicate. I use it to send messages and watch videos. It connects me to people around the world. This type of exercise trains your brain to stay flexible while speaking. Fluency also grows when you tell small stories, because stories naturally connect sentences together. Instead of speaking in isolated phrases, you begin linking ideas. For example, you might tell a short story about your morning. This morning I woke up early. I made a cup of coffee and looked outside the window. The weather was calm and quiet, so I decided to start my day with some English practice. Notice how each sentence connects smoothly to the next one. Let's practice. Use storytelling together. Write 4 sentences describing something simple that happened today. Maybe you say, "Today I started my morning slowly. I checked my messages and planned my tasks. Later I spent some time learning English. It felt good to focus on improving my skills." These small stories help your brain organize thoughts naturally in English. One more important thing to remember is patience. Fluency does not appear overnight. It grows quietly, like a plant that becomes stronger every day when you water it. Some days you will feel confident. Other days you may feel slow or unsure, but every small practice session moves you forward. Even listening carefully is part of fluency training, because when you listen to natural English regularly, your brain becomes familiar with rhythm, pronunciation, and sentence patterns. Over time, these patterns begin to appear in your own speaking. So while you are listening to this lesson, you are already training your brain. You are hearing natural phrases, noticing how sentences connect, and building a deeper understanding of how English flows. Now let's do one more small exercise before we continue. Write 5 sentences about your daily routine. Maybe something like, "I usually wake up early. I drink coffee or tea. I check my messages or emails. During the day, I work or study. In the evening, I relax and practice English." These simple routine sentences are some of the most useful phrases you can learn. When you repeat these ideas often, your brain begins to store them automatically, and one day, without even noticing, you will start speaking English more smoothly than before. And that moment, when speaking feels easier, when ideas come to your mind more naturally, that is when you begin to realize something important. The door to English fluency is slowly opening. Let's continue our journey together, because unlocking English fluency is not about learning hundreds of complicated rules. It is about building a comfortable relationship with the language, step by step, moment by moment, until speaking English begins to feel natural in your everyday life. One of the most powerful ways to build this relationship with English is by learning to talk about simple daily activities. These everyday moments are the easiest place to practice because they already exist in your life. You don't need to imagine complicated situations. You only need to describe what is already happening around you. Think about a very normal part of the day. For example, eating, breakfast. This moment can easily become English practice. You might quietly describe the situation in English. You might say something like, "I'm making breakfast right now. I'm preparing some toast and a cup of coffee. The kitchen is quiet this morning. I feel relaxed while I start my day." These sentences may seem small, but every sentence strengthens your ability to speak naturally. Now let's try a short writing exercise together. Imagine you are preparing breakfast or eating something in the morning. Write 4 simple sentences about this moment, maybe something like, I'm sitting at the table. I'm drinking a warm cup of tea. The morning feels peaceful. I'm thinking about my plans for the day. When you practice describing ordinary situations like this, you train your brain to connect English with real life. Another key, yes, step in unlocking fluency is learning how to expand your thoughts little by little. Many learners answer questions with very short responses, but fluency grows when you add small details. Imagine someone asks you a common question. What are you doing today? You could answer with one short sentence, but instead, try expanding your response. You might say, today I'm focusing on improving my English. I'm planning to study for a while and maybe watch an English lesson later. After that, I might relax and listen to some music. Notice how these sentences flow naturally from one idea to the next. Let's practice this idea together. Imagine someone asks you, what are your plans for today? Take a moment and write 3 or 4 sentences answering that question. Maybe you write something like, today I want to spend some time practicing English. Later I will finish some work. In the evening I might watch a movie. I hope the day will feel productive and calm. This kind of practice helps you become more comfortable sharing ideas in English. Another very useful fluency habit is talking to yourself in English during quiet moments. Some learners feel strange about this idea at first, but it is actually one of the best ways to build speaking confidence because there is no pressure, no fear of mistakes, only practice. For example, imagine you are walking somewhere, maybe walking to the store or walking through a park. You can quietly describe what you see around you. You might say, the weather is nice today. I can hear birds nearby. People are walking and talking. The air feels fresh. These small observations help your brain practice building sentences. Yes, naturally. Let's try a small imagination exercise together. Imagine you are walking outside right now, maybe on a quiet street. Write 4 sentences describing what you might see or hear. You might say, I see a few cars passing by. Some people are walking slowly. The sky looks bright. The street feels calm today. When you practice describing scenes like this, your ability to speak begins to feel more automatic. Another important part of fluency is learning how to share opinions. In everyday conversations, people often talk about what they think, what they like, and what they prefer. These types of sentences appear constantly in real conversations. For example, someone might ask you, do you enjoy learning English? Instead of saying only yes, you could expand your answer. You might say, yes, I enjoy learning English because it helps me communicate with people. I also like discovering new words and expressions. Sometimes it is challenging, but it feels rewarding when I understand more than before. Now let's practice expressing opinions. Write 3 sentences that begin with I like. Maybe something like, I like learning new English phrases. I like listening to English conversations. I like practicing when I have free time. These simple patterns help your brain build comfortable speaking habits. You can also practice sentences that begin with I enjoy. For example, I enjoy watching English videos. I enjoy hearing different accents. I enjoy noticing my progress. These kinds of sentences appear very often in daily conversations. Let's try another exercise together. Write 3 sentences beginning with I or enjoy. Take a moment. Maybe write something like, I enjoy learning something new every day. I enjoy understanding English more clearly. I enjoy practicing speaking slowly and carefully. This practice helps your brain create natural expressions for real conversations. Another important fluency skill is learning how to explain simple experiences. For example, imagine you are telling a friend about something you did yesterday. You might say, yesterday I spent some time studying English. At first it felt a little difficult, but after practicing for a while, I began to understand more. That made me feel proud of my progress. Notice how these sentences connect feelings, actions, and results. This type of storytelling makes conversations feel natural and engaging. Let's practice describing a past experience. Write 4 sentences about something you did yesterday. Maybe something like, yesterday I woke up a little earlier than usual. I spent some time reading and practicing English. Later, I took a break and relaxed. In the evening, I felt happy because I practiced something useful. This type of reflection strengthens your fluency step by step. Another powerful technique for building fluency is asking yourself questions in English, because conversations are always built from questions and answers. When you practice both sides of a conversation, you become much more confident speaking. For example, you might ask yourself, why am I learning English? And then answer the question. You might say, I'm learning English because it helps me connect with the world. It allows me to understand more information, and it gives me new opportunities. These kinds of self-questions help you explore ideas more deeply in English. Let's try a small question exercise together. Write 1 question about your English learning journey, and then answer it in 3 sentences. Maybe something like, why do I want to improve my English? I want to improve my English because communication is important. I want to feel confident speaking with others. And I enjoy learning new skills. This kind of practice strengthens both thinking and speaking abilities. Another moment where fluency grows naturally is when you talk about your goals, because goals help you express future ideas. For example, you might say, I want to become more confident in English. I want to speak more smoothly. I want to understand conversations easily. These types of sentences appear often in everyday discussions. Let's practice future ideas together. Write 3 sentences beginning with I want to. Maybe something like, I want to improve my listening skills. I want to practice speaking every day. I want to feel comfortable using English in real conversations. This small activity helps your brain practice future expressions naturally. Fluency also grows when you allow yourself to pause while speaking. Many learners feel nervous about pauses, but pauses are completely natural in communication. Even native speakers pause while they think about the next idea. A pause is not a mistake. It is simply a moment for your brain to organize thoughts. When you accept pauses as part of communication, you begin to speak with more confidence. Imagine you are explaining something to a friend. You might say, "I started learning English a few years ago, and at first it felt difficult, but slowly I began understanding more, and now I feel more comfortable practicing every day." Notice how small pauses make the speech sound thoughtful and natural. Let's do one more small storytelling exercise together. Write 5 sentences describing your English learning journey. Maybe something like, "I started learning English because I wanted to communicate better. At first I felt shy speaking, but with practice I became more confident. Now I enjoy learning something new every day. I believe my fluency will continue growing." This kind of reflection strengthens both confidence and fluency. When you practice like this, day after day, your brain begins to recognize patterns. Sentences become easier to form. Ideas appear more quickly, and conversations begin to feel less stressful. One day, you may suddenly notice something surprising. You start answering questions faster, you express your thoughts more clearly, and you begin speaking English without translating every word in your mind. That moment is not magic. It is simply the result of many small practice moments. Moments like the ones we are sharing together right now. And as you continue practicing, listening, writing, and speaking little by little, the door to English fluency continues opening wider and wider. Let's continue moving forward together, because unlocking your English fluency is not something that happens in one big moment. It happens through many small moments of practice. Moments when you listen carefully. Moments when you try to express your thoughts. And moments when you slowly begin to trust your ability to communicate. Many learners think that fluent speakers always know exactly what to say, but the truth is, fluent speakers are simply comfortable building sentences step by step. They don't wait for the perfect sentence to appear in their mind. They begin speaking, and the sentence grows naturally as they continue. For example, imagine someone asks you a simple question like, "How is your day going?" Instead of thinking for a long time about the perfect answer, you can start with something simple. You might say, "My day is going well so far," and then add a little more information. "I've been practicing English for a while," and that may be another small idea. "And I'm feeling motivated to keep improving." Notice how the answer grows naturally, one idea at a time. This is a very important habit for fluency, starting with a simple idea and then expanding it little by little. When you practice this regularly, speaking becomes much easier because you no longer feel pressure to create a long, perfect sentence immediately. Let's practice this idea together. Imagine someone asks you, "How is your English learning going?" Take a moment and write 3 sentences answering this question. You might write something like, "My English learning is going well. I practice a little every day, and I can feel my confidence slowly growing." When you build answers step by step like this, you train your brain to communicate ideas naturally. Another powerful habit that helps unlock fluency is learning to notice small details in your day and describe them in English. When you observe your surroundings carefully, you create endless opportunities to practice speaking. For example, maybe you are sitting near a window. You might notice the light coming, but through the glass, the quiet sound of the outside world, or the feeling of calm in the room. These small details can easily become English sentences. You might say, "The sunlight is coming through the window. The room feels peaceful. I can hear a car passing by outside." These small descriptions train your brain to connect language with observation. Let's try a small exercise together. Imagine you are sitting somewhere comfortable, maybe at a desk or near a window. Write 4 sentences describing what you might see or hear around you. Maybe something like, "The room is quiet. There is a desk in front of me. The air feels calm. I'm focusing on learning English." These sentences may be simple, but they strengthen your speaking ability every time you create them. Another important part of fluency is learning to describe actions that are happening right now, because real conversations often focus on the present moment. For example, imagine someone calls you and asks, "What are you doing right now?" You might answer by describing your current activity. You could say, "Right now I'm listening to an English lesson. I'm writing some notes. And I'm trying to practice speaking more confidently." This kind of explanation is very natural in everyday conversation. Let's practice present actions together. Write 4 sentences describing what you are doing right now. Maybe something like, "I'm listening carefully. I'm thinking about the sentences. I'm writing some ideas. And I'm practicing my English." These types of sentences appear constantly in real conversations, so practicing them helps you feel more prepared when speaking with others. Another key to fluency is learning how to connect sentences smoothly, because conversations are not just separate sentences. They are flowing ideas. For example, instead of saying 2 completely separate sentences like, "I studied English today. It was helpful," you can connect the ideas more naturally. You might say, "I studied English today and it was really helpful." Or, "I studied English today, so I feel more confident." These small connectors help your speech sound more natural. Let's practice connecting ideas together. Write 3 sentences using the word "and." Maybe something like, "I listened to an English lesson and wrote some notes." "I practiced speaking and repeated the sentences." "I learned new expressions and felt motivated to continue." This type of connection helps your speech flow more smoothly. You can also connect ideas using the word "because." This helps you explain reasons, which is something people do very often in conversations. For example, you might say, "I practice English every day because I want to improve my fluency." Or, "I enjoy learning English because it helps me communicate with people around the world." These sentences show both your action and your reason. Let's practice explaining reasons. Together. Write 3 sentences using "because." Maybe something like, "I listen carefully because I want to understand clearly." "I practice speaking because confidence grows through practice." "I study English because communication is important." These patterns appear constantly in daily conversations. Another important fluency skill is learning to describe preferences. because people often talk about what they like or what they prefer. For example, someone might ask you, "Do you prefer studying in the morning or at night?" You might answer like this: "I prefer studying in the morning because my mind feels fresh." Or, "I prefer studying at night because the environment is quiet." These answers are simple but expressive. Let's practice describing preferences together. Write 3 sentences starting with "I prefer." Maybe something like, "I prefer learning slowly and clearly. I prefer listening carefully before speaking. I prefer practicing every day instead of studying for many hours at once." These types of sentences make your English feel more natural and personal. Fluency also grows when you learn to explain your thoughts in a relaxed way, not rushing, not worrying about perfection, just sharing ideas calmly. Imagine you are talking with a friend about learning languages. You might say something like, "Learning a language takes time, but every small step helps. Sometimes progress feels slow, but consistency makes a big difference. When we practice regularly, our confidence grows naturally." Notice how these sentences sound thoughtful and calm. Let's try a reflection exercise together. Write 4 sentences about your experience learning English. Maybe something like, "Learning English has been an interesting journey. At first I felt nervous speaking, but with practice I feel more comfortable, and I know that my fluency will continue improving." These kinds of reflections help you express deeper ideas in English. Another very helpful fluency technique is repeating useful sentence patterns, because patterns help your brain build sentences faster. For example, you can practice sentences that start with "sometimes I." You might say, "Sometimes I practice English in the morning. Sometimes I listen to English conversations. Sometimes I repeat sentences out loud." This pattern is simple but very useful in conversation. Let's practice together. Write 3 sentences beginning with "sometimes I." Maybe something like, "Sometimes I review words I learned before. Sometimes I write small stories in English. Sometimes I speak English to myself while thinking." Each repetition strengthens your fluency habit. You can also practice the pattern "everyday I," which is very common in conversations about routines. For example, "Every day I try to learn something new. Every day I listen to English for a few minutes. Every day I remind myself that progress takes patience." These kinds of sentences describe regular habits. Let's try another exercise. Write 3 sentences beginning with "everyday I." Maybe something like, "Every day I practice listening. Every day I try to speak a little. Every day I believe I'm getting better." This simple repetition trains your brain to build sentences more quickly. Another step toward fluency is learning to speak about the future, because conversations often include plans and hopes. For example, you might say, "Tomorrow I will practice English again. Next week I will try to speak more. In the future I hope to communicate confidently." These future expressions help you talk about goals and expectations. Let's practice future ideas together. Write 3 sentences beginning with "in the future." Maybe something like, "In the future, I want to speak English fluently. In the future, I hope to travel and communicate easily. In the future, I will continue improving step by step. This type of practice helps you express long-term ideas clearly. When you combine all these small skills, describing your day, sharing opinions, explaining reasons, talking about experiences, and discussing plans, something very interesting begins to happen. Your brain starts connecting these patterns automatically. And when someone asks you a question, your response begins to appear more quickly. Instead of searching for every single word, your mind begins using familiar sentence patterns, and speaking starts to feel smoother. And slowly, almost without noticing, you begin unlocking something powerful: your natural ability to communicate in English. Let's continue moving deeper into this journey of unlocking your English fluency, because the more we explore how language works in real life, the easier it becomes to use it naturally. Fluency is not built through memorizing long lists of words. It grows through connection. Connection between ideas, connection between thoughts, and connection between your daily life and the language you're learning. One important truth about fluency is that your brain learns language best when it feels relaxed. When learners feel too much or pressure, their mind becomes tight and nervous, and speaking feels difficult. But when the mind feels calm, language begins to flow more freely. That is why practicing English in simple, everyday moments is so powerful. Imagine a quiet moment during the day. Maybe you are sitting with a cup of tea or taking a short break. This is a perfect time to practice thinking in English. Instead of letting your thoughts move only in your first language, you can gently shift them into English. You might quietly think something like, "This moment feels peaceful. I'm enjoying this short break. It feels good to slow down for a moment." These kinds of thoughts are simple, but they train your brain to think directly in English, and that is one of the biggest steps toward fluency. Let's practice this idea together. Take a moment and imagine you're sitting somewhere calm, maybe near a window, maybe at your desk. Write 4 sentences describing what you might be thinking in that quiet moment. You might write something like, "I'm taking a short break. The room feels quiet. I'm thinking about my progress. Learning English feels rewarding." This small activity helps your mind build natural inner conversations in English. Another powerful step toward fluency is learning to describe actions that happen regularly in your life, because daily routines create strong language habits. For example, think about the moment when you begin your work or study. Maybe you open a notebook or turn on your computer. This moment can easily become English practice. You might say, "I'm getting ready to focus. I'm organizing my tasks. I'm preparing to learn something new today." These simple sentences connect English with your daily routine. Now let's try a small practice exercise. Think about a task you usually do during the day, maybe studying, working, or organizing something. Write 4 sentences describing that activity. For example, I sit down and open my notebook. I start reviewing what I learned before. I focus on understanding the lesson. I try to practice carefully. These sentences help you build confidence when talking about your daily responsibilities. Fluency also becomes stronger when you learn to explain situations clearly, because conversations often involve describing what is happening around you. Imagine a situation where someone asks, "What's happening around right now?" You might answer by describing the environment. You could say, "It's quiet here. I'm focusing on practicing English." The atmosphere feels calm. These kinds of descriptions make your English sound natural and expressive. Let's practice describing a situation together. Imagine you are sitting somewhere comfortable and learning. Write 4 sentences explaining the situation around you. You might say, "I'm sitting quietly. I'm listening carefully. I'm thinking about each sentence. This moment feels productive." Practicing these kinds of descriptions strengthens your fluency step by step. Another useful skill for fluent communication is learning how to explain reasons for your actions, because people often ask why we do something. For example, someone might ask, "Why do you practice English every day?" Instead of answering very briefly, you can explain your reason clearly. You might say, "I practice every day because consistency helps learning. When I practice regularly, I remember more words, and my confidence grows slowly." This type of explanation makes your communication feel richer. Let's try a short writing exercise together. Write 3 sentences explaining why learning English is important to you. Maybe something like, "Learning English helps me communicate with more people. It helps me understand information from different places, and it gives me more opportunities in the future." When you express your motivations clearly, your fluency becomes stronger because your ideas become more meaningful. Another moment where fluency grows naturally is when you describe your feelings about learning, because emotions are a very natural part of conversation. For example, you might say, "Sometimes learning English feels challenging, but it also feels exciting when I understand something new. Every small improvement gives me motivation to continue." These types of sentences help you speak honestly and naturally. Let's practice describing feelings together. Write 4 sentences about how you feel during your English learning journey. You might write something like, "Sometimes I feel nervous speaking, but I feel proud when I understand new phrases. I feel motivated when I practice consistently, and I feel hopeful about my progress." This type of reflection strengthens both confidence and fluency. Another important skill for unlocking fluency is learning to explain small experiences from your day, because storytelling helps connect sentences naturally. Imagine telling someone about a small moment that happened earlier today. You might say, "Earlier today, I decided to spend some time practicing English. First, I listened carefully. Then I wrote a few sentences, and I felt satisfied after practicing." Notice how the sentences connect like a small story. Let's practice storytelling together. Write 5 sentences describing a simple moment from your day. Maybe something like, "This morning I started my day slowly. I made a drink and sat quietly. Then I spent some time learning English. I wrote a few sentences to practice. After that, I felt happy about my progress." This type of storytelling builds natural fluency because ideas flow smoothly from one sentence to the next. Fluency also improves when you learn to ask questions naturally. because conversations are always built around questions and responses. For example, you might ask someone, "How long have you been learning English? What helps you improve your speaking? Do you practice every day?" Asking questions like this helps you stay engaged in conversations. Let's practice question building together. Write 3 questions about learning English. You might write something like, "How can I improve my fluency? What is the best way to practice listening? How can I become more confident speaking?" Creating questions like these trains your brain to participate actively in conversations. Another powerful habit for fluency is repeating useful expressions many times, because repetition helps your brain remember language patterns automatically. For example, you can practice sentences that begin with "it feels." You might say, "It feels good to practice today. It feels easier to understand now. It feels motivating to see progress." These expressions are common in everyday speech. Let's try a small exercise together. Write 3 sentences beginning with "it feels," maybe something like, "It feels rewarding to learn something new. It feels encouraging to understand more English. It feels exciting to improve step by step." This simple repetition helps your brain store useful expressions. You can also practice the pattern "I noticed," which is very common when describing observations. For example, "I noticed that my listening's improving. I noticed that practice helps my confidence. I noticed that small steps make a difference." These sentences show awareness and reflection. Let's practice this pattern together. Write 3 sentences beginning with "I noticed," maybe something like, "I noticed that repetition helps memory. I noticed that speaking slowly helps clarity. I noticed that practice reduces fear." This pattern is very helpful in real conversations. Another important step toward fluency is learning to accept mistakes calmly, because mistakes are not signs of failure. They are signs that you are actively learning. Every fluent speaker once made mistakes, and every mistake helped them improve. When you accept this idea, your fear of speaking becomes smaller, and your willingness to communicate becomes stronger. Imagine telling yourself something encouraging. You might say, "Mistakes are part of learning. Every practice moment helps me grow. Fluency comes through patience." These positive thoughts support your language journey. Let's finish this section with one final reflection exercise. Write 5 sentences encouraging yourself in your English learning journey. Maybe something like, "I am improving step by step. Every practice session helps me grow. Confidence will come with time. I will continue practicing. And one day, English will feel natural to me." These words may seem simple, but they create a strong mindset for learning. When your mindset becomes supportive, when practice becomes part of daily life, and when language connects with your real experiences, something wonderful begins to happen. Your English stops feeling like a subject you study and starts feeling like a language you live with every day. And this is exactly how fluency begins to unlock. Slowly, naturally, and confidently. Let's continue moving forward on this path of unlocking your English fluency, because the more you practice expressing real thoughts in English, the more comfortable the language begins to feel. At first, speaking English can feel like climbing a hill. Every sentence requires effort. Every word requires attention. But with consistent practice, something interesting begins to happen. The hill slowly becomes a smooth road, and speaking begins to feel easier. One powerful way to reach this point is by learning to talk about everyday experiences in a calm and natural way, because real conversations rarely involve complicated ideas. Most conversations are about simple things, daily routines, feelings, plans, memories, and small moments from life. Imagine a situation where someone asks you a very common question. What do you usually do in the evening? This question appears in many conversations, and it is a perfect opportunity to practice fluency. Instead of giving a very short answer, you can share a small description. You might say, "In the evening, I usually relax after a long day. Sometimes I watch something interesting. Other times I spend a few minutes practicing English. It helps me end the day in a calm way." Notice how these sentences are simple, but they form a clear and natural response. Let's practice this idea together. Take a moment and write 4 sentences about what you usually do in the evening. You might write something like, "In the evening, I like to slow down. I often spend some time learning English. Sometimes I listen to conversations. Then I relax and prepare for the next day." These small routine descriptions help your brain organize ideas smoothly in English. Another important skill for fluent communication is describing what you enjoy doing during your free time, because people often talk about hobbies and interests in conversations. For example, someone might ask you, "What do you like to do in your free time?" Instead of answering with only a few words, you can expand your response naturally. You might say, "In my free time, I enjoy learning new things. I sometimes watch English lessons or listen to conversations. I also like relaxing and thinking about my goals." These types of answers help conversations flow naturally. Now let's try a small exercise together. Write 4 sentences about something you enjoy doing in your free time. Maybe something like, "In my free time, I enjoy practicing English. I like listening carefully to improve my understanding. Sometimes I write short sentences to practice. It feels rewarding to see my progress." This activity strengthens your ability to talk about personal interests. Another powerful step toward fluency is learning how to describe your thoughts during a normal day. Because our thoughts create natural language practice. Imagine you are working on something and you pause for a moment. You might quietly think in English, "I'm making good progress. I should continue focusing. This practice is helping me improve." These types of thoughts strengthen your connection with English because they appear naturally during daily activities. Let's practice this idea together. Write 4 sentences describing what you might think while studying or learning. For example, "I want to understand this clearly. I need to focus carefully. Every small step helps me improve. I feel motivated to continue." Practicing internal thoughts like these helps you develop natural fluency from within. Another important part of fluent communication is learning how to explain small problems and solutions. Because everyday conversations often include situations where we describe challenges, For example, imagine you are explaining a small difficulty while learning English. You might say, "Sometimes I forget words while speaking, but when I stay calm, I can explain my idea differently. And little by little, my confidence grows." These sentences show how you can describe a challenge and a solution at the same time. Let's practice explaining a situation together. Write 4 sentences about a challenge you sometimes face while learning English. Maybe something like, "Sometimes I feel nervous speaking. Sometimes I forget the right word. But when I keep practicing, I improve. And that gives me motivation to continue." This type of reflection strengthens both language skills and confidence. Fluency also grows when you learn to share small moments of success, because talking about progress helps you express positive experiences. For example, imagine you understand a sentence that once felt difficult. You might describe the moment like this: "Today I understood something more clearly. It felt satisfying to recognize the words." Moments like this remind me that progress is happening. These types of sentences express achievement in a natural way. Let's try a short practice exercise together. Write 4 sentences describing a moment when you felt proud of your learning. Maybe something like, "One day I understood a conversation more easily. I felt surprised by my improvement. That moment gave me confidence. It encouraged me to continue practicing." This kind of storytelling strengthens both fluency and motivation. Another powerful habit for fluency is learning to describe what you notice while learning, because awareness helps your brain recognize patterns. For example, you might say, "I noticed that repetition helps my memory. I noticed that listening carefully improves my pronunciation. I noticed that practicing every day makes a difference." These sentences show observation and understanding. Let's practice this pattern together. Write 3 sentences beginning with "I notice." Maybe something like, "I noticed that small practice sessions help me remember more. I noticed that speaking slowly makes my sentences clearer. I noticed that confidence grows with practice." This pattern is very natural in everyday conversations. Another key step toward fluency is learning how to express encouragement, both to yourself and to others, because supportive language appears often in real conversations. For example, you might say something encouraging like, "Learning takes time. Every step matters. Consistency is powerful." These simple expressions carry strong meaning. Let's practice encouraging language together. Write 4 sentences encouraging yourself in your English journey. Maybe something like, "I am improving every day. My confidence is growing. Practice will bring fluency. I will continue moving forward." This positive language strengthens your mindset while practicing English. Another useful fluency skill is learning to compare experiences, because people often talk about differences between past and present. For example, you might say, "Before I felt nervous speaking English. Now I feel more comfortable expressing my ideas. My understanding has improved." These comparisons help you express progress clearly. Let's try a comparison exercise together. Write 4 sentences comparing your English ability now and in the past. Maybe something like, In the past, I struggled to understand conversations. Now I understand more words. Before I hesitated while speaking. Now I feel more confident trying. This exercise helps you describe improvement naturally. Another important skill for fluency is learning how to talk about hopes and dreams, because future conversations often include goals and expectations. For example, you might say, I hope to speak English confidently one day. I hope to communicate easily with people. I hope my fluency continues growing. These sentences help you express positive future ideas. Let's practice hope expressions together. Write 3 sentences beginning with I hope. Maybe something like, I hope to understand English conversations easily. I hope to. Yes, speak naturally without fear. I hope to continue improving every day. This pattern appears often in natural conversations. Another moment where fluency grows is when you describe learning experiences step by step, because explaining a process helps organize your thoughts. For example, you might describe your learning routine like this. First, I listen carefully to the lesson. Then I repeat the sentences. After that, I write some examples. Finally, I reflect on what I learned. This type of explanation trains your brain to speak clearly about processes. Let's try a small exercise together. Write 4 sentences describing your English learning routine. Maybe something like, first I listen carefully, then I write down useful sentences. After that, I repeat them. Finally, I think about how to use them in real life. This practice builds strong speaking habits. When you combine all these small skills, describing routines, explaining experiences, expressing hopes, sharing feelings, and reflecting on progress, something very important begins to happen. English slowly becomes a language you use to express your life, not just a subject you study. And when language becomes part of your life, fluency begins to appear naturally. Let's continue exploring more ways to unlock your English fluency, because every small improvement builds momentum. And momentum is what transforms effort into confidence. When you practice expressing ideas regularly, your brain begins to understand that English is not something distant or complicated. It becomes a natural tool for communication. Many learners reach a moment where they understand quite a lot of English, but speaking still feels slow. If this has happened to you, please remember something important. Understanding a language and speaking it are 2 slightly different skills. Understanding fills your mind with ideas and vocabulary, but speaking requires practice turning those ideas into sentences. That is why speaking practice, even very simple speaking practice, is so powerful, because it teaches your brain to move from understanding to expression. Imagine a simple situation. Someone asks you, "What did you learn today?" This question appears in many real conversations, and it is a great opportunity to practice fluency. You might answer like this: "Today I learned how important practice is. I noticed that repeating sentences helps my memory. I also realized that speaking slowly helps me stay calm." These sentences share a learning experience and also express yes reflection. Let's practice this idea together. Write 4 sentences describing something you learned recently. Maybe something like, recently I learned that consistency is important. I learned that listening carefully improves pronunciation. I learned that mistakes are part of learning. And I learned that patience brings progress. This kind of reflection strengthens both fluency and understanding. Another important step toward fluency is learning to explain simple opinions in conversations, because discussions often involve sharing personal viewpoints. For example, someone might ask you, "Do you think learning English every day is important?" Instead of answering with only yes, you can expand your response naturally. You might say, "Yes. I think daily practice is important. Even a few minutes every day helps your brain remember the language. Small, consistent steps create big improvement over time." Notice how this answer sounds thoughtful but still simple. Now let's try a small exercise. Write 3 sentences beginning with "I believe." Maybe something like, "I believe practice builds confidence." "I believe patience is important in language learning." "I believe everyone can improve with effort." These types of expressions appear often in everyday conversations. Another powerful habit that helps unlock fluency is describing what you are learning step by step, because explaining learning processes makes ideas clearer. For example, you might say, "First, I listen to the lesson carefully. Then I repeat the sentences slowly. After that, I write a few examples. Finally, I review the ideas again." This type of explanation shows clear thinking and structured communication. Let's practice describing a process together. Write 4 sentences explaining how you practice English. Maybe something like, "First, I listen carefully. Then I repeat what I hear. After that, I write small sentences. Finally, I review my progress." These patterns are very helpful in real conversations when explaining routines. Another skill that strengthens fluency is learning to describe the environment around you during daily life, because real conversations often include descriptions of places. Imagine you are sitting somewhere comfortable, perhaps near a window or at a desk. You might describe the environment like this: "The room feels calm and quiet. The light is soft. The atmosphere helps me focus." These kinds of descriptions make language feel alive and connected to real experience. Let's try a small observation exercise. Write 4 sentences describing the place where you usually study or relax. Maybe something like, "The space is comfortable. There is a desk near the wall. The environment feels peaceful. It helps me concentrate." Practicing these descriptions builds your ability to communicate naturally. Another powerful step toward fluency is learning to describe your progress honestly, because conversations often include discussions about improvement. For example, you might say, "At the beginning, learning English felt difficult, but now I understand much more. My confidence has improved, and I feel motivated to continue." These kinds of sentences show personal growth and reflection. Let's practice describing progress together. I see, write 4 sentences about how your English has improved. Maybe something like, "In the past, I understood only a little. Now I understand more conversations. Before I hesitated speaking. Now I feel more comfortable trying." This reflection helps you express your journey clearly. Another useful fluency technique is explaining your daily habits. because habits appear often in everyday conversations. For example, someone might ask, "How do you usually practice English?" You might answer, "I usually listen to lessons for a few minutes every day. Sometimes I write sentences to practice. I also repeat useful phrases." These sentences describe habits clearly and naturally. Let's try a practice exercise together. Write 4 sentences describing your English learning habits. Maybe something like, "I try to practice every day. I listen and carefully to understand pronunciation. I repeat sentences to improve fluency. I remind myself that progress takes time." This type of description strengthens your speaking ability. Another important skill for fluent communication is learning to express gratitude, because conversations often include appreciation. For example, you might say, "I'm grateful for the opportunity to learn English. I'm thankful for the resources that help me practice. I appreciate every moment of progress." These expressions sound natural and sincere. Let's practice gratitude expressions together. Write 3 sentences beginning with "I'm grateful." Maybe something like, "I'm grateful for the chance to learn. I'm grateful for every small improvement. I'm grateful for the motivation to continue." These sentences help you express positive feelings in English. Another step toward fluency is learning to describe what motivates you, because motivation is an important topic in many conversations. For example, you might say, "Learning new things motivates me. Seeing progress encourages me. Understanding conversations inspires me to continue." These types of expressions help you share your inner thoughts clearly. Let's try a motivation exercise together. Write 4 sentences describing what motivates you to learn English. Maybe something like, "I feel motivated when I understand more. Progress encourages me. Learning new words feels exciting. Each practice session gives me energy to continue." This reflection strengthens both fluency and personal connection with the language. Another useful speaking skill is learning to summarize experiences, because summarizing helps you explain ideas clearly and efficiently. For example, imagine someone asks you about your learning experience. You might say, "Learning English has been a long journey. It requires patience and consistency, but every step forward feels rewarding." These types of summaries are common in conversations. Let's practice summarizing together. Write 3 sentences summarizing your English learning journey. Maybe something like, "My English journey started slowly. Practice helped me improve. Now I feel more confident continuing." This simple summary strengthens your ability to express complete ideas. Another key habit for fluency is learning to stay calm when searching for words, because hesitation is normal in conversation. Instead of feeling frustrated when a word doesn't appear immediately, you can pause, breathe, and explain your idea in another way. This flexible thinking helps conversations continue smoothly. Imagine saying something like, "I can't remember the exact word, but it means something similar to," or, "What I want to say is." These small phrases help you continue speaking even when you need a moment to think. Let's practice flexible expression together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, "What I want to say is." Maybe something like, What I want to say is that practice helps. What I want to say is that patience matters. What I want to say is that confidence grows slowly. These phrases help maintain fluency during conversations. Another powerful step toward fluency is learning to reflect on your learning experience regularly, because reflection helps you understand your progress. You might say something like, "When I look back at my learning journey, I see how much I have improved. Every small effort has contributed to my progress, and I know that continuing practice will bring even more improvement." These reflections strengthen motivation and communication skills. Let's finish this section with a final reflection exercise. Write 5 sentences about what English fluency means to you. Maybe something like, "Fluency means expressing ideas comfortably. It means communicating clearly. It means understanding conversations naturally. It means feeling confident speaking. And it means continuing to grow every day." These reflections connect language with personal meaning. When English becomes connected to your thoughts, your routines, your emotions, and your experiences, something important begins to change. The language stops feeling like a challenge and begins feeling like a companion on your journey. And with each small step, your English fluency continues unlocking, naturally, steadily, and confidently. Let's continue moving forward together, because every small moment of practice builds a stronger connection between your thoughts and the English language. When you keep expressing simple ideas again and again, your brain begins to organize sentences more naturally, and speaking slowly becomes more comfortable. Many learners think fluency means speaking long sentences immediately, but in reality, fluency often begins with short, clear ideas that connect smoothly. When you express one idea clearly, then add another idea, and then another, your communication becomes natural without needing complicated grammar. Imagine a situation where someone asks you a very common question. "How is your learning going lately?" You don't need to create a complicated answer. You can begin with something simple. You might say, "My learning is going well." Then add another idea. "I practice a little every day." And then add one more thought. "And I can feel my confidence improving." This step-by-step speaking method makes communication much easier. Let's practice this together. Imagine someone asks you, "How is your English practice going these days?" Take a moment and write 3 or 4 sentences answering that question. Maybe something like, "My English practice is improving. I try to listen carefully every day. I repeat useful phrases, and I feel more confident than before." These small responses train your brain to communicate ideas smoothly. Another important way to strengthen fluency is by learning how to describe simple activities that all happen during the day, because daily life gives you endless chances to practice. Think about a normal moment like organizing your workspace. You might quietly describe it in English. You might say, "I'm arranging my desk." "I'm preparing to focus." "I want the space to feel comfortable." These sentences connect language with your daily actions. Let's try a small exercise together. Imagine you are preparing to start a task, maybe studying or working. Write 4 sentences describing what you are doing. For example, "I'm sitting down at my desk." I'm opening my notebook. I'm preparing to focus on my work. I want to learn something useful today. This kind of practice strengthens your ability to describe real situations naturally. Another helpful skill for fluent communication is explaining how you solve small problems. Because every day, conversations often include moments when we talk about challenges and solutions. For example, you might say, "Sometimes I forget the right word." When that happens, I try to explain the idea in another way. This helps me continue speaking. These sentences show how you handle difficulties calmly. Let's practice describing a solution together. Write 4 sentences about how you handle difficulties while learning English. Maybe something like, "Sometimes I pause to think. I take a deep breath. Then I try again." And slowly the sentence becomes clearer. These reflections help you express your learning process in English. Another key step toward fluency is learning to talk about your experiences in a simple storytelling style, because stories help sentences flow naturally from one idea to the next. Imagine describing a moment when you practiced English earlier in the day. You might say, "Earlier today I spent some time listening to an English lesson. At first I focused on understanding each sentence. Then I repeated the phrases. After a while I noticed my confidence growing." This small story connects ideas smoothly. Let's try a storytelling exercise together. Write 5 sentences describing a recent moment when you practiced English. Maybe something like, "Today I decided to practice for a few minutes. I listened carefully. Then I repeated the sentences. I wrote a few examples. After that, I felt proud of my progress." This kind of storytelling strengthens your fluency because it teaches your brain to connect ideas naturally. Another useful habit for fluency is learning to describe observations, because noticing small details around you helps you practice expressing thoughts clearly. For example, you might say, "I noticed that practicing slowly helps my pronunciation. I noticed that repetition makes sentences easier. I noticed that confidence grows with time." These observations show awareness and understanding. Let's practice observation sentences together. Write 3 sentences beginning with "I see" or "I notice." Maybe something like, "I noticed that practice improves memory. I noticed that listening carefully helps comprehension. I noticed that speaking calmly helps clarity." This simple pattern appears often in everyday conversations. Another important fluency skill is explaining what you have learned over time, because conversations often include reflections about progress. For example, you might say, "Over time, I have learned that consistency matters." Even short, as practice sessions can be powerful. Small improvements add up. These reflections help you express long-term understanding. Let's try a reflection exercise together. Write 4 sentences beginning with, "Over time, I have learned." Maybe something like, "Over time, I have learned that patience is important. Over time, I have learned that listening helps speaking. Over time, I have learned that practice builds confidence. Over time, I have learned that progress comes step by step." This pattern helps you communicate deeper ideas clearly. Another helpful step toward fluency is learning how to talk about what inspires you, because inspiration is something people often discuss in conversations. For example, you might say, seeing my progress inspires me. Understanding conversations motivates me. Learning new phrases encourages me to. I continue. These sentences express motivation and positive emotion. Let's practice inspiration sentences together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, "It inspires me when." Maybe something like, "It inspires me when I understand a full sentence." "It inspires me when I remember new words." "It inspires me when I feel more confident speaking." This pattern helps express emotional experiences naturally. Another key habit for fluency is learning to explain your daily learning routine in detail, because routines help create strong speaking patterns. For example, you might say, "Each day I spend a few minutes listening carefully. Then I repeat what I hear. After that, I write some examples. Finally, I reflect on what I learned." This description explains a process clearly. Let's try a routine exercise together. Write 4 sentences describing your daily English learning routine. Maybe something like, "I start by listening to English. Then I repeat the phrases. After that, I write small sentences. Finally, I review what I practiced." These kinds of explanations strengthen your ability to speak about routines naturally. Another important skill for unlocking fluency is expressing gratitude for your progress, because positive language builds confidence. For example, you might say, "I'm thankful for the opportunity to learn. I appreciate every small improvement. I'm grateful for the motivation to continue." These expressions are simple but meaningful. Let's practice gratitude expressions together. Write 3 sentences beginning with "I appreciate," maybe something like, "I appreciate every practice moment." "I appreciate the chance to improve." "I appreciate the progress I have made." This language helps you communicate appreciation clearly. Another useful step toward fluency is describing your future learning goals, because conversations often include plans and hopes. For example, you might say, "In the future, I want to speak English more confidently. I want to communicate clearly in conversations. I want to keep improving step by step." These sentences express hopes naturally. Let's practice future goals together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, "My goal is," maybe something like, "My goal is to speak more comfortably." "My goal is to understand conversations easily." "My goal is to keep practicing every day." This pattern helps express aspirations clearly. Another very helpful fluency habit is learning to stay relaxed when forming sentences, because stress often slows thinking, but calm thinking allows ideas to flow more easily. Imagine telling yourself something supportive. You might say, "It's okay to take my time. Clear communication matters more than speed. Every sentence helps me improve." These thoughts encourage a calm speaking mindset. Let's try a short encouragement exercise. Write 4 sentences encouraging yourself while learning English. Maybe something like, "I am improving little by little. My confidence grows with practice. Every effort matters. I will continue moving forward." These sentences strengthen both your language and your mindset when you combine all these habits: describing your activities, explaining your experiences, sharing observations, expressing goals, and reflecting on progress, something very important begins to happen. Your mind becomes comfortable using English to express real thoughts. And when English becomes a natural way to share your thoughts, your fluency continues unlocking, one sentence at a time. Let's continue building your English fluency step by step, because every moment you spend expressing your ideas in English makes the language feel more natural in your mind. Fluency is not created through pressure or rushing. It grows through calm repetition, clear thinking, and regular practice. Many learners reach a point where they understand many English sentences but still hesitate before speaking. This hesitation is very common, and it usually happens because the brain is trying to organize words quickly. When you give your brain regular opportunities to express ideas slowly and clearly, that hesitation begins to disappear. One helpful technique is learning how to describe simple moments as they happen, because describing the present moment trains your brain to create sentences naturally. Imagine a moment where you are sitting quietly and focusing on your learning. You might describe the moment like this: right now, I am listening carefully. I am paying attention to each sentence. I am thinking about how to use these ideas in my own speech. These types of sentences help your brain practice real communication. Let's try a small practice exercise together. Write 4 sentences describing what you are doing at this moment. Maybe something like, I am focusing on the lesson. I am thinking about the ideas. I am writing some notes. I am practicing my English step by step. This kind of practice connects language directly with your real experience. Another powerful step toward fluency is learning how to explain what helps you learn. Because when you talk about learning strategies, you practice expressing complex ideas in simple language. For example, you might say, listening regularly helps my understanding. Repeating sentences improves my speaking. Writing small examples strengthens my memory. These sentences show clear reasoning. Let's practice this together. Write 3 sentences beginning with "it helps me when." Maybe something like, it helps me when I listen carefully. It helps me when I repeat sentences slowly. It helps me when I practice every day. These patterns are common in conversations when explaining personal learning methods. Another important fluency habit is describing changes you notice in your learning, because noticing improvement builds motivation and helps you communicate progress. For example, you might say, I notice that my listening has improved. I understand more words than before. My confidence while speaking is slowly increasing. These reflections show progress clearly. Let's practice describing improvement together. Write 4 sentences about changes you have noticed in your English learning. Maybe something like, before I needed more time to understand. Now I recognize more words. Before I hesitated speaking. Now I feel more comfortable trying. This reflection helps you express your learning journey clearly. Another useful skill for fluent communication is learning how to explain ideas calmly during conversations, because sometimes we need a moment to organize our thoughts. For example, you might say, let me think for a moment. What I mean is, or the idea I want to express is, These phrases help you continue speaking. While you organize your next sentence, let's practice this technique together. Write 3 sentences beginning with "what I mean is." Maybe something like, "What I mean is that practice builds confidence." "What I mean is that patience helps learning." "What I mean is that fluency grows slowly." These phrases help maintain natural communication even when you need a moment to think. Another powerful step toward fluency is learning to describe everyday decisions. Because conversations often include explanations about choices, imagine someone asking, "Why did you decide to practice English today?" You might answer like this: "I decided to practice because I want to improve." Every small effort helps my progress. Practicing regularly makes the language easier. This kind of explanation helps your speech feel natural and meaningful. Let's try a small decision exercise together. Write 4 sentences explaining why you chose to learn English. Maybe something like, "I decided to learn English because communication is important. I want to understand conversations clearly. I enjoy learning new skills. I believe this journey will open many opportunities." These kinds of explanations strengthen both your fluency and your motivation. Another helpful habit for fluent communication is describing what you observe during learning, because observation helps your brain recognize patterns in language. For example, you might say, "I see that repetition improves my pronunciation. I see that listening carefully helps comprehension. I see that confidence grows with practice." These sentences describe learning insights clearly. Let's practice observation together. Write 3 sentences beginning with "I see that." Maybe something like, "I see that practice builds fluency. I see that patience helps progress. I see that small steps matter." These expressions help you share thoughtful observations during conversations. Another key step toward fluency is learning to explain what motivates you to continue, because motivation is often part of meaningful conversations. For example, you might say, "I feel motivated when I understand something new. I feel encouraged when I notice improvement. I feel excited when I can express my ideas clearly." These sentences express emotional experiences naturally. Let's try a motivation exercise together. Write 4 sentences describing what motivates you to keep learning English. Maybe something like, "Seeing progress motivates me. Understanding conversations encourages me. Learning new phrases excites me. Each practice session strengthens my confidence." These reflections connect language with personal motivation. Another powerful technique for building fluency is describing small achievements, because recognizing progress helps build confidence. For example, you might say, "Today I understood a sentence more easily. I remembered a phrase I learned before." These moments remind me that improvement is happening. These kinds of expressions celebrate progress naturally. Let's practice describing achievements together. Write 4 sentences about a small success you experienced while learning English. Maybe something like, "Today I understood more than before. I recognized several words. I felt proud of my effort. This moment gave me confidence. This exercise helps you communicate positive." experiences clearly. Another useful step toward fluency is learning how to summarize your learning experience in simple language, because summarizing helps organize your thoughts clearly. For example, you might say, "Learning English takes time. Consistency makes progress possible. Every practice moment helps." These sentences summarize important ideas simply. Let's try a summarizing exercise together. Write 3 sentences summarizing your English learning experience. Maybe something like, "My English journey requires patience. Practice helps me improve. Confidence grows step by step." This kind of summary strengthens your ability to express ideas clearly. Another important fluency skill is learning to express encouragement for yourself and others, because supportive language appears frequently in conversations. For example, I might say, "Keep practicing and improvement will come. Every effort matters. Small progress is still progress." These expressions communicate encouragement and positivity. Let's practice encouragement together. Write 4 sentences encouraging someone who is learning English. Maybe something like, "Don't give up. Practice a little every day. Be patient with yourself. Your fluency will grow." These sentences help you communicate support clearly. Another helpful habit for fluency is describing your future learning path, because talking about plans helps your brain practice future expressions. For example, you might say, "Tomorrow I will practice listening. Next week I will try speaking more. In the future, I hope to communicate confidently." These sentences express clear goals. Let's practice future plans together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, "Tomorrow I will." Maybe something like, "Tomorrow I will listen to English conversations. Tomorrow I will repeat useful phrases. Tomorrow I will continue improving." This practice strengthens your ability to talk about future actions. Another important step toward fluency is developing patience with your learning journey, because language growth happens gradually, not instantly. You might remind yourself, fluency develops step by step. Every effort contributes to improvement. Progress is happening even when it feels slow. These reflections help maintain a positive mindset. Let's finish this section with a final reflection exercise. Write 5 sentences about how you want your English to improve in the future. Maybe something like, "I want to speak comfortably. I want to understand conversations easily. I want to express my ideas clearly. I want to communicate confidently. I will continue practicing every day." These sentences connect your learning with your future goals. When you continue practicing like this, describing experiences, explaining ideas, sharing motivations, and reflecting on progress, something powerful happens. English becomes a language you actively use to express your life. And when language becomes part of your life, fluency continues unlocking naturally. Let's continue our journey together, because every step you take in practicing English brings you closer to a moment where speaking begins to feel natural. Many learners imagine fluency as something distant, something that only appears after many years of study. But the truth is, fluency begins much earlier than people expect. It begins the moment you start expressing your ideas regularly. even if those ideas are simple. Think about the way conversations happen in real life. People rarely use complicated language when they speak with friends or colleagues. Most conversations are built from clear thoughts, shared slowly, one sentence at a time. When you understand this, you realize that fluency is not about complexity. It is about comfort. Imagine someone asking you a question like, "How do you usually spend your mornings?" This is a very common conversation topic, and it gives you a perfect chance to practice fluency. You might answer like this: "My mornings usually begin quietly. I take a moment to wake up slowly. Sometimes I drink tea or coffee. Then I start planning my day." Notice how each sentence describes a simple moment, but together they create a clear picture. Let's practice this together. Write 4 sentences describing how your mornings usually begin. Maybe something like, "My morning starts calmly. I take a few minutes to wake up. I think about my plans. Then I prepare for the day." These kinds of descriptions help your brain organize thoughts naturally. Another important step toward fluency is learning to explain what you enjoy about learning English. Because people often talk about their interests and passions. For example, you might say, "I enjoy learning English because it helps me understand more about the world. I like discovering new expressions. I enjoy noticing my progress over time." These sentences show both emotion and reasoning. Let's practice expressing enjoyment together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, "One thing I enjoy about learning English is." Maybe something like, "One thing I enjoy about learning English is understanding conversations. One thing I enjoy is discovering new words. One thing I enjoy is feeling more confident speaking." This exercise helps you express personal feelings clearly. Another powerful fluency skill is learning to describe moments of curiosity, because curiosity drives learning. For example, you might say, "Sometimes I become curious about how native speakers express ideas. I listen carefully to understand their sentence patterns. Curiosity helps me learn more naturally." These sentences describe a learning mindset. Let's try a curiosity exercise together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, "Sometimes I become curious about." Maybe something like, "Sometimes I become curious about how conversations flow. Sometimes I become curious about pronunciation. Sometimes I become curious about new phrases." This pattern helps you communicate thoughtful observations. Another helpful step toward fluency is learning to explain the small actions that help you improve, because explaining your habits strengthens your understanding. For example, you might say, "Repeating sentences helps me remember them. Listening carefully improves my pronunciation. Writing examples helps me organize my thoughts." These explanations are very natural in conversations about learning. Let's practice explaining helpful actions together. Write 4 sentences beginning with, "One thing that helps me improve is." Maybe something like, "One thing that helps me improve is listening every day. One thing that helps me improve is repeating sentences. One thing that helps me improve is writing small examples. One thing that helps me improve is practicing regularly." This pattern helps you explain your learning strategies clearly. Another important skill for fluent communication is describing the atmosphere around you, because environment often becomes part of conversation. Imagine someone asking, "Where do you usually practice English?" You might answer, "I usually practice in a quiet place. The environment helps me focus. I feel comfortable when the atmosphere is calm." These descriptions make your speech feel more vivid. Let's try a small environment exercise together. Write 4 sentences describing the place where you usually study or practice English. Maybe something like, "I like studying in a quiet space. The room feels comfortable. I can concentrate easily. The environment helps me stay focused." These descriptions help you communicate clearly about your surroundings. Another powerful step toward fluency is learning to reflect on how your confidence has changed, because growth is an important part of your language journey. For example, you might say, "At the beginning, I felt shy speaking English. I worried about making mistakes. But with practice, my confidence started growing. Now I feel more comfortable expressing ideas." These sentences describe progress in a meaningful way. Let's practice reflection together. Write 4 sentences describing how your confidence has improved. Maybe something like, "In the past, I hesitated speaking. Now I try more often. Practice helped me become calmer. My confidence continues growing." This reflection helps you communicate your progress clearly. Another useful fluency habit is learning to describe the importance of patience, because patience is essential in language learning. For example, you might say, "Learning a language requires patience. Progress happens slowly, but every effort builds improvement." These sentences express an important learning principle. Let's try a patience exercise together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, "Patience helps." Maybe something like, "Patience helps me stay motivated. Patience helps me accept mistakes. Patience helps me continue learning." This pattern helps you communicate important ideas clearly. Another step toward fluency is learning to describe what makes learning enjoyable, because enjoyment keeps motivation strong. For example, you might say, "Learning English feels exciting when I understand new ideas. It feels rewarding to notice progress. Enjoyment makes practice easier." These sentences describe positive learning experiences. Let's practice describing enjoyment together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, "It feels rewarding when." Maybe something like, "It feels rewarding when I understand a full sentence. It feels rewarding when I remember new words. It feels rewarding when I speak more confidently." These expressions help you communicate emotional experiences. Another important fluency skill is learning to explain why communication matters, because language is ultimately about connection. For example, you might say, "Language helps people understand each other. Communication connects different cultures. English allows me to share ideas with more people." These sentences express meaningful thoughts. Let's try a communication exercise together. Write 4 sentences explaining why communication in English is valuable. Maybe something like, "English helps people connect. It allows ideas to travel across cultures. It opens opportunities. It helps us understand each other." This type of reflection strengthens your ability to express meaningful ideas. Another powerful step toward fluency is describing the role of practice in your progress, because practice is the foundation of improvement. For example, you might say, practice turns knowledge into skill. Every repetition strengthens memory. Practice helps confidence grow. These statements summarize important truths about learning. Let's practice explaining practice together. Write 3 sentences beginning with practice helps. Maybe something like, practice helps me remember words. Practice helps me speak more smoothly. Practice helps me feel confident. These patterns appear often in everyday conversation. Another useful fluency skill is describing how you stay motivated when learning feels difficult, because everyone experiences challenges sometimes. For example, you might say, when learning feels difficult, I remind myself why I started. I think about my goals. This helps me continue practicing. These sentences describe resilience. Let's try a motivation exercise together. Write 4 sentences describing how you stay motivated during difficult moments. Maybe something like, when learning feels slow, I stay patient. I remind myself that progress takes time. I continue practicing, and eventually improvement appears. These reflections help you communicate perseverance. Another helpful habit for fluency is learning to describe the future version of yourself as a fluent speaker, because imagining success builds confidence. For example, you might say, in the future, I will speak English comfortably. I will communicate my ideas clearly. I will feel confident in conversations. These sentences express hope and determination. Let's practice future vision together. Write 4 sentences describing the fluent English speaker you want to become. Maybe something like, I will speak calmly and clearly. I will share my ideas confidently. I will understand conversations easily. I will enjoy communicating in English. This exercise strengthens your vision for the future. Another important step toward fluency is reminding yourself that learning is a journey, not a race. When you accept this truth, pressure disappears and progress becomes easier. You might tell yourself, learning takes time. Consistency is more important than speed. Every practice moment matters. These reflections help maintain a healthy mindset. Let's finish this section with a final reflection exercise. Write 5 sentences describing what English fluency means in your life. Maybe something like, fluency means expressing my thoughts clearly. It means understanding conversations naturally. It means communicating with confidence. It means connecting with people. And it means continuing to grow. These sentences connect language with personal meaning. When English becomes a way to express your thoughts, experiences, goals, and emotions, something remarkable happens. The language becomes part of who you are. And when that connection grows stronger, fluency continues unlocking naturally. One conversation at a time. Let's continue moving forward together. Because fluency grows strongest when English becomes part of your daily thinking. When you begin using the language to describe your thoughts, your actions, and your experiences, the distance between you and English slowly disappears. Instead of feeling like a language you study, it becomes a language you use. Many learners believe that fluent speakers always speak quickly and perfectly. But real fluency is much simpler than that. Real fluency means being able to share your ideas calmly, clearly, and comfortably, even if your sentences are simple. What truly matters is the ability to express your thoughts without feeling blocked by fear or hesitation. Imagine a conversation where someone asks you a common question. What do you usually think about while learning English? This question invites reflection, and reflection is a great opportunity to practice speaking naturally. You might respond like this. While learning English, I often think about how much progress I've made. Sometimes I think about the new words I learned. Other times I think about how I can use them in conversations. These sentences show thought and awareness. Let's practice reflection together. Write 4 sentences beginning with, when I practice English, I often think about maybe something like, when I practice English, I often think about my goals. When I practice English, I think about improving my confidence. When I practice English, I focus on understanding. When I practice English, I remind myself to stay patient. This type of reflection strengthens your connection with the language. Another powerful way to unlock fluency is by describing what learning English feels like, because feelings help make communication more natural and human. For example, you might say, learning English sometimes feels challenging, but it also feels exciting. Every time I understand something new, I feel proud. These emotional descriptions help your language sound more expressive. Let's try a small exercise together. Write 4 sentences beginning with learning English feels. Maybe something like, learning English feels rewarding. Learning English feels exciting when I understand something new. Learning English feels challenging sometimes. Learning English feels motivating. These expressions help you communicate emotions clearly. Another important fluency skill is learning to explain how you organize your learning, because people often talk about their study methods. For example, you might say, I try to organize my learning into small steps. First, I listen carefully, then I repeat the sentences. After that, I practice writing. These explanations show clear and thinking. Let's practice describing your learning process together. Write 4 sentences beginning with when I study English. Maybe something like, when I study English, I listen carefully. When I study English, I repeat phrases. When I study English, I write examples. When I study English, I review what I learned. These patterns help you communicate routines clearly. Another helpful step toward fluency is describing the difference between understanding and speaking, because recognizing this difference helps you improve both skills. For example, you might say, sometimes I understand more than I can say. But speaking practice helps close that gap. With time, my speaking becomes easier. These sentences explain the learning process clearly. Let's practice describing learning differences together. Write 3 sentences, beginning with, sometimes I understand. Maybe something like, sometimes I understand conversations but need more time to respond. Sometimes I understand words but need practice speaking. Sometimes I understand ideas but want to express them better. These reflections help you communicate honestly about your progress. Another powerful habit for fluent communication is describing moments of concentration, because concentration is a part of learning and working. For example, you might say, "When I concentrate deeply, I understand more. Focusing helps me notice details. Concentration makes learning more effective." These sentences describe mental effort clearly. Let's practice describing concentration together. Write 3 sentences beginning with "when I focus." Maybe something like, "When I focus, I understand better. When I focus, I remember more words. When I focus, I feel more confident." This pattern helps you explain mental effort naturally. Another important step toward fluency is describing the role of listening, because listening is the foundation of speaking. For example, you might say, "Listening carefully helps me understand natural rhythm. It teaches me how sentences flow. It also helps me learn pronunciation." These explanations are common in conversations about learning. Let's practice listening reflections together. Write 4 sentences beginning with "listening helps me." Maybe something like, "Listening helps me understand pronunciation. Listening helps me recognize sentence patterns. Listening helps me improve comprehension. Listening helps me feel more confident." These sentences strengthen your ability to explain learning. Strategies. Another key skill for fluent communication is learning to explain how repetition improves your memory, because repetition is one of the strongest learning tools. For example, you might say, "Repeating sentences helps them stay in my memory. It trains my mouth to pronounce words, and it makes speaking easier." These explanations show understanding of the learning process. Let's practice repetition reflections together. Write 3 sentences beginning with "repeating sentences helps." Maybe something like, "Repeating sentences helps me speak more smoothly. Repeating sentences helps me remember vocabulary. Repeating sentences helps me build confidence." These patterns appear often in conversations about language learning. Another helpful step toward fluency is describing what you do when you feel stuck while speaking, because every learner experiences this moment. For example, you might say, "When I feel stuck, I pause and think. I try to explain my idea in another way. This helps me continue speaking." These strategies show flexibility. Let's practice describing this situation together. Write 4 sentences beginning with "when I forget a word." Maybe something like, "When I forget a word, I stay calm. When I forget a word, I explain the idea differently. When I forget a word, I keep speaking. When I forget a word, I learn from the experience." These reflections strengthen your speaking mindset. Another powerful habit for unlocking fluency is learning to celebrate small progress, because recognition builds motivation. For example, you might say, "Every new word I remember feels like progress. Every conversation I understand gives me confidence. Small achievements encourage me to continue." These expressions highlight success. Let's practice celebrating progress together. Write 3 sentences beginning with "I feel proud when." Maybe something like, I feel proud when I understand a conversation. I feel proud when I speak more confidently. I feel proud when I remember new words. These sentences express positive emotions clearly. Another useful step toward fluency is describing the importance of consistency, because consistent practice is the foundation of improvement. For example, you might say, consistency turns small efforts into real progress. Practicing every day strengthens memory. Consistency builds confidence. These sentences communicate an important learning principle. Let's practice consistency expressions together. Write 3 sentences, beginning with practicing every day. Maybe something like, practicing every day improves my listening. Practicing every day strengthens my speaking. Practicing every day brings me closer to fluency. This pattern appears frequently in motivational conversations. Another important fluency skill is describing the future version of yourself as a confident English speaker, because visualizing success strengthens motivation. For example, you might say, one day I will speak English naturally. I will communicate my ideas clearly. I will feel relaxed during conversations. These sentences express hope and determination. Let's try a future vision exercise together. Write 4 sentences beginning with, one day I will. Maybe something like, one day I will speak English comfortably. One day I will share my ideas confidently. One day I will understand conversations easily. One day I will enjoy communicating in English. This exercise strengthens your vision for the future. Another helpful habit for fluency is reminding yourself that progress takes time, because patience allows learning to happen naturally. You might tell yourself, every effort counts. Every practice moment matters. Step by step, fluency grows. These reflections help maintain motivation. Let's finish this section with a final reflection exercise. Write 5 sentences describing how you want to continue your English journey. Maybe something like, I will continue practicing regularly. I will stay patient. I will keep listening and speaking. I will believe in my progress. And I will keep unlocking my fluency. These reflections connect language learning with determination. When English becomes a natural way to express your thoughts, your learning experiences, your goals, and your reflections, something powerful happens. Speaking stops feeling like a task and begins to feel like communication. And when communication becomes comfortable, your English fluency continues unlocking naturally, day by day. Let's continue moving forward together, because unlocking English fluency is really about building a comfortable rhythm with the language. When you practice regularly and allow yourself to express ideas freely, your mind begins to recognize patterns, and speaking becomes more natural over time. Many learners worry about making mistakes when they speak, but mistakes are actually one of the most powerful teachers in language learning. Every time you try to express an idea, even if the sentence is not perfect, your brain learns something new. It learns how words connect, how ideas flow, and how communication works. Imagine a situation where you are speaking with someone and you realize that your sentence was not completely correct. Instead of feeling discouraged, you can simply continue speaking. You might say something like, "Let me say that in another way." Or, "What I mean is," these simple expressions allow the conversation to continue naturally. Let's practice this idea together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, "Let me explain it another way." Maybe something like, "Let me explain it another way." Practice helps fluency. Let me explain it another way. Speaking often builds confidence. Let me explain it another way. Patience improves learning. These types of phrases help you continue communicating even when you need to adjust your sentence. Another important step toward fluency is learning how to talk about everyday responsibilities, because many conversations involve discussing work, study, and daily tasks. For example, someone might ask you, "What are you working on these days?" You might answer like this: "These days I'm focusing on improving my English. I spend some time practicing listening. I also try to speak whenever I can." These sentences describe your activities clearly. Let's practice describing responsibilities together. Write 4 sentences beginning with, "These days I." Maybe something like, "These days I practice English regularly. These days I focus on understanding conversations. These days I repeat useful phrases. These days I feel more confident." This type of practice strengthens your ability to talk about your current activities. Another powerful habit for fluency is describing what you notice during conversations, because observation helps you understand how language works in real situations. For example, you might say, "During conversations, I notice how people connect their ideas. I notice how they pause naturally. I notice how they use simple sentences to express clear thoughts." These reflections help you learn from real communication. Let's try a small observation exercise together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, "During conversations, I notice." Maybe something like, "During conversations, I notice how people speak calmly." "During conversations, I notice how ideas flow." "During conversations, I notice how listening helps understanding." These sentences help you describe communication patterns clearly. Another useful step toward fluency is learning to describe moments when you feel confident, because confidence is a powerful part of speaking. For example, you might say, "I feel confident when I understand what someone says. I feel confident when I remember useful phrases. I feel confident when I speak slowly and clearly." These expressions help you communicate your emotional experience with learning. Let's practice describing confidence together. Write 4 sentences beginning with, "I feel confident when." Maybe something like, "I feel confident when I practice regularly. I feel confident when I speak without rushing. I feel confident when I understand conversations. I feel confident when I stay calm." This exercise helps you express confidence naturally. Another important skill for fluent communication is describing how you overcome hesitation, because hesitation happens to everyone when learning a language. For example, you might say, "When I hesitate, I remind myself to stay calm. I focus on the idea I want to express. Then I continue speaking." These strategies help maintain communication. Let's practice describing this situation together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, "When I hesitate." Maybe something like, "When I hesitate, I pause for a moment. When I hesitate, I breathe and continue. When I hesitate, I focus on my message. These reflections help you communicate strategies clearly. Another powerful habit for fluency is learning to explain what helps you stay motivated, because motivation is essential for long-term learning. For example, you might say, seeing progress motivates me. Understanding more words encourages me. Every improvement inspires me to continue. These sentences express positive motivation. Let's try a motivation exercise together. Write 4 sentences beginning with "What motivates me is..." Maybe something like, "What motivates me is seeing improvement. What motivates me is understanding conversations. What motivates me is building confidence. What motivates me is achieving my goals." This pattern helps express personal motivation clearly. Another helpful step toward fluency is describing how practice changes your abilities over time, because growth is an important topic in conversation. For example, you might say, "At first, speaking English felt difficult, but practice made it easier. Over time, my confidence improved." These sentences describe progress clearly. Let's practice describing growth together. Write 4 sentences beginning with "at first." Maybe something like, "At first I spoke slowly. At first I needed more time to think. At first I felt nervous. At first I doubted myself." Then continue your thought with improvement. This exercise helps you describe personal development naturally. Another important fluency skill is learning to describe what you enjoy about communicating with others, because communication is the purpose of language. For example, you might say, "I enjoy sharing ideas with people. I enjoy understanding different perspectives." Communication allows us to connect. These sentences express the purpose of language clearly. Let's practice communication expressions together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, "I enjoy communicating because..." Maybe something like, "I enjoy communicating because it connects people. I enjoy communicating because ideas become clearer. I enjoy communicating because conversations are meaningful." These expressions help you communicate deeper ideas. Another useful habit for fluency is learning to describe your learning environment, because environment often affects concentration and motivation. For example, you might say, "A quiet environment helps me focus. A comfortable space encourages learning. A calm atmosphere supports concentration." These sentences describe surroundings clearly. Let's try an environment exercise together. Write 4 sentences beginning with "a good learning environment." Maybe something like, "A good learning environment feels calm. A good learning environment helps concentration. A good learning environment supports practice. A good learning environment encourages motivation." This pattern strengthens your descriptive ability. Another key step toward fluency is learning to express encouragement for others who are also learning, because supportive communication is very common. For example, you might say, "Keep practicing and improvement will come. Every small effort matters. Learning a language is a journey." These expressions communicate encouragement naturally. Let's practice encouragement together. Write 4 sentences encouraging someone who is learning English. Maybe something like, "Be patient with yourself. Practice a little every day. Confidence will grow. You will improve. These expressions strengthen your ability to communicate supportive messages. Another important habit for fluent communication is describing the benefits of learning English, because people often discuss why language learning is valuable. For example, you might say, learning English opens new opportunities. It helps people communicate globally. It allows us to share ideas across cultures. These sentences express meaningful benefits. Let's practice describing benefits together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, learning English allows me to. Maybe something like, learning English allows me to communicate with more people. Learning English allows me to understand new information. Learning English allows me to explore new opportunities. This pattern helps express purpose clearly. Another powerful step toward fluency is learning to describe your commitment to learning, because commitment keeps progress moving forward. For example, you might say, I am committed to improving my English. I will continue practicing regularly. My effort will lead to progress. These sentences express determination. Let's try a commitment exercise together. Write 4 sentences beginning with, I will continue. Maybe something like, I will continue. And practicing, I will continue learning new words. I will continue listening carefully. I will continue believing in my progress. These expressions strengthen your sense of purpose. Another helpful habit for fluency is reflecting on how far you have come in your learning journey, because reflection builds appreciation for progress. For example, you might say, when I look back at my journey, I see improvement. I remember when speaking felt difficult. Now I feel more confident. These reflections help you express personal growth. Let's finish this section with a reflection exercise. Write 5 sentences beginning with, when I look back. Maybe something like, when I look back, I see my progress. When I look back, I remember my early struggles. When I look back, I feel proud. When I look back, I feel motivated. When I look back, I see how far I have come. These reflections connect language learning with personal experience. When English becomes a language you use to describe your experiences, your progress, and your reflections, something powerful happens. You begin to realize that fluency is not a distant goal. It is a skill that grows every day through practice. Let's continue our journey together, because by now you may already feel something important. The more you talk about your thoughts, experiences, and daily life in English, the more natural the language begins to feel. Fluency grows when English becomes part of your thinking process, not only something you study for a short time. Many learners spend years collecting vocabulary and grammar rules. But the true turning point in fluency usually happens when they begin using English to express their real life, their real feelings, their real ideas. When language becomes personal, communication becomes much easier. Think about a simple moment during your day. Maybe you are planning what you want to do next. This is another perfect opportunity to practice thinking and speaking in English. You might say something like, in the next hour, I want to focus on learning. I want to practice carefully. I want to understand these ideas deeply. These types of thoughts help your brain practice planning in English. Let's try a planning exercise together. Write 4 sentences beginning with, "Right now I want to." Maybe something like, "Right now I want to improve my English." "Right now I want to practice speaking." "Right now I want to focus on understanding." "Right now I want to build my confidence." These sentences help you express your intentions clearly. Another important step toward fluency is learning to talk about how learning English affects your life, because language learning often changes the way we see the world. For example, you might say, "Learning English helps me understand more information. It allows me to communicate with people from different cultures. It gives me access to knowledge." These sentences express the impact of learning. Let's practice describing impact together. Write 4 sentences beginning with, "Learning English helps me," maybe something like, "Learning English helps me communicate." "Learning English helps me understand new ideas." "Learning English helps me feel more confident." "Learning English helps me explore opportunities." This pattern is very common in conversations about language learning. Another powerful habit for fluency is describing how you feel when you make progress, because recognizing progress strengthens motivation. For example, you might say, "When I understand a new phrase, I feel excited. When I remember vocabulary, I feel proud. When I speak confidently, I feel satisfied." These emotional descriptions make your language more expressive. Let's practice describing these feelings together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, "I feel happy when." Maybe something like, "I feel happy when I understand." Ask conversations. "I feel happy when I remember new words." "I feel happy when I speak more smoothly." These expressions help you communicate emotional experiences clearly. Another useful skill for fluent communication is learning to describe the importance of persistence, because persistence helps you continue learning even during difficult moments. For example, you might say, "Persistence keeps me moving forward. Even when learning feels slow, persistence helps." Consistency and persistence together create progress. These reflections show determination. Let's try a persistence exercise together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, "Persistence helps me." Maybe something like, "Persistence helps me continue learning." "Persistence helps me overcome challenges." "Persistence helps me reach my goals." This pattern helps express determination clearly. Another key step toward fluency is learning to talk about the benefits of practicing speaking regularly, because speaking practice turns knowledge into real communication. For example, you might say, "Speaking regularly improves my confidence. It helps my brain organize ideas quickly. It allows me to express my thoughts clearly." These sentences describe the advantages of speaking practice. Let's practice describing speaking benefits together. Write 4 sentences beginning with, "Speaking helps me." Maybe something like, "Speaking helps me organize my ideas." "Speaking helps me build confidence." "Speaking helps me communicate clearly." "Speaking helps me think in English." This exercise strengthens your ability to explain learning strategies. Another helpful step toward fluency is learning to describe how your mindset influences your learning, because attitude plays a big role in progress. For example, You might say, a positive mindset makes learning easier. Believing in progress helps motivation. Confidence grows when I stay patient. These sentences show the importance of mindset. Let's try a mindset exercise together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, a positive mindset helps. Maybe something like, a positive mindset helps me stay motivated. A positive mindset helps me overcome difficulties. A positive mindset helps me continue learning. This pattern appears often in motivational conversations. Another important fluency skill is describing how listening and speaking work together, because these 2 skills support each other. For example, you might say, listening teaches me how sentences sound. Speaking helps me practice. Or as those patterns, together they strengthen my fluency. These sentences explain a connection between skills. Let's practice describing this connection together. Write 3 sentences beginning with listening and speaking together. Maybe something like, listening and speaking together improve fluency. Listening and speaking together strengthen confidence. Listening and speaking together build communication. These expressions help explain learning methods clearly. Another powerful habit for fluency is learning to describe the journey of learning English as a long process, because understanding the journey helps maintain patience. For example, you might say, learning English is a journey. Every step teaches something new. Each practice session moves me forward. These sentences express the idea of gradual progress. Let's try a journey exercise together. Write 4 sentences beginning with my English journey. Maybe something like, my English journey started slowly. My English journey continues every day. My English journey teaches me patience. My English journey inspires me. This reflection strengthens your connection with the language. Another helpful step toward fluency is describing what you do when you feel discouraged, because every learner experiences moments of doubt. For example, you might say, when I feel discouraged, I remind myself of my progress. I remember why I started, then I continue practicing. These sentences describe resilience. Let's practice resilience together. Write 4 sentences beginning with, when I feel discouraged. Maybe something like, when I feel discouraged, I take a short break. When I feel discouraged, I review. What I learned. When I feel discouraged, I stay patient. When I feel discouraged, I continue practicing. These reflections strengthen your determination. Another powerful habit for fluent communication is learning to describe what you appreciate about the learning process, because appreciation keeps motivation strong. For example, you might say, I appreciate every opportunity to practice. I appreciate the progress I have made. I appreciate the ability to communicate. These expressions show gratitude. Let's try an appreciation exercise together. Write 3 sentences beginning with I appreciate. Maybe something like, I appreciate every moment of learning. I appreciate my growing confidence. I appreciate the chance to improve. These expressions help you communicate gratitude clearly. Another key step toward fluency is learning to describe your hopes for the future, because future dreams inspire continued effort. For example, you might say, In the future, I hope to speak English comfortably. I hope to understand conversations easily. I hope to communicate confidently. These sentences express positive expectations. Let's practice hope expressions together. Write 4 sentences beginning with, I hope to. Maybe something like, I hope to speak clearly. I hope to understand quickly. I hope to communicate naturally. I hope to keep improving. These patterns help express aspirations clearly. Another useful fluency skill is describing what fluency itself means to you, because defining your goal helps you stay focused. For example, you might say, fluency means expressing ideas without fear. Fluency means understanding conversations naturally. Fluency means communicating with confidence. These definitions help clarify your goal. Let's try a definition exercise together. Write 4 sentences beginning with, for me, fluency means. Maybe something like, for me, fluency means speaking calmly. For me, fluency means sharing ideas. For me, fluency means understanding others. For me, fluency means enjoying conversations. These reflections help you connect language learning with personal meaning. Now, as we reach this moment in our lesson, it's important to pause and recognize something powerful. Every sentence you wrote, every idea you practiced, every reflection you shared, has been a step toward unlocking your English fluency. Fluency is not built in a single moment. It is built through thousands of small expressions, through patience, through curiosity, through practice, and when you continue expressing your thoughts day after day, sentence after sentence, you begin to notice something remarkable. English stops feeling like something outside of you. It becomes a voice you can use to share your ideas with the world. Let's continue moving forward together, because the more you allow English to become part of your thinking and daily reflection, the more natural your fluency becomes. By this point in our lesson, you may already notice something interesting. Expressing ideas in English does not always require complex grammar or difficult vocabulary. Often, the most powerful communication comes from simple thoughts shared clearly. Fluent speakers are not always using the most advanced words. Instead, they use familiar sentence patterns comfortably, and they focus on expressing meaning rather than perfection. When you adopt this mindset, your English becomes more flexible and your confidence grows. Think about a simple moment during your day when you reflect on what you have learned. This reflection itself is a powerful fluency exercise. You might say something like, today I spent time practicing English. I listened carefully to the sentences. I tried to express my thoughts clearly, and I feel proud of the effort I made. These reflections show how fluency develops through awareness. Let's practice this reflection together. Write 4 sentences beginning with, today I realized. Maybe something like, today I realized that practice improves fluency. Today I realized that patience is important. Today I realized that eased repetition strengthens memory. Today I realized that confidence grows slowly. This exercise helps you express personal discoveries clearly. Another important step toward fluency is learning to describe how language learning influences your thinking, because language does not only change the way you speak, it also changes the way you think. For example, you might say, learning English helps me think in new ways. It encourages me to observe language carefully. It makes me more aware of communication. These reflections connect language with personal growth. Let's try a small exercise together. Write 4 sentences beginning with, "Learning English makes me." Maybe something like, "Learning English makes me more curious. Learning English makes me more confident. Learning English makes me pay attention to details. Learning." Our English makes me appreciate communication. These expressions help you describe personal transformation. Another powerful habit for fluency is learning to describe moments of clarity. Those moments when something suddenly becomes easier to understand. For example, you might say, "Sometimes a sentence suddenly becomes clear. Sometimes I recognize patterns I didn't see before." Those moments remind me that progress is happening. These reflections help you communicate learning experiences. Let's practice describing clarity together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, "Sometimes I suddenly understand." Maybe something like, "Sometimes I suddenly understand how sentences connect. Sometimes I suddenly understand the meaning of a phrase. Sometimes I suddenly understand a conversation." These sentences help you express moments of discovery. Another useful step toward fluency is learning to explain what you do when you feel proud of your progress, because celebrating success strengthens motivation. For example, you might say, "When I feel proud of my progress, I remind myself to continue. I appreciate the effort I have made, and I look forward to learning more." These expressions describe positive reflection. Let's try a small exercise together. Write 4 sentences beginning with, "When I feel proud." Maybe something like, "When I feel proud, I remember how far I have come. When I feel proud, I stay motivated. When I feel proud, I continue practicing. When I feel proud, I appreciate the journey." These reflections help you communicate positive emotions. Another important fluency skill is learning to describe how language connects people, because communication is ultimately about relationships. For example, you might say, "Language allows people to share ideas. It helps cultures connect. Communication creates understanding." These sentences express the social power of language. Let's practice describing connection together. Write 3 sentences beginning with "language connects." Maybe something like, "Language connects people across cultures. Language connects ideas. Language connects experiences." These patterns help express meaningful thoughts. Another helpful step toward fluency is learning to describe the role of curiosity in learning, because curiosity keeps your mind open to new ideas. For example, you might say, "Curiosity encourages exploration. It motivates me to discover new expressions. Curiosity keeps learning exciting." These reflections describe an important learning attitude. Let's try a curiosity exercise together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, "Curiosity helps me." Maybe something like, "Curiosity helps me ask questions. Curiosity helps me explore new phrases. Curiosity helps me stay interested." These expressions strengthen your ability to discuss learning attitudes. Another powerful habit for fluency is learning to describe your daily commitment to improvement, because commitment is what turns learning into progress. For example, You might say, every day I choose to practice. Every day I remind myself of my goals. Every day I move one step closer to fluency. These statements show dedication. Let's practice commitment expressions together. Write 4 sentences beginning with, every day I choose. Maybe something like, every day I choose to practice. Every day I choose to learn. Every day I choose patience. Every day I choose progress. These patterns help express determination clearly. Another useful step toward fluency is learning to describe the relationship between effort and improvement, because effort creates growth. For example, you might say, effort transforms practice into progress. Every effort strengthens ability. Effort builds confidence. These sentences communicate an important truth about learning. Let's try an effort exercise together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, my effort helps. Maybe something like, my effort helps me improve. My effort helps me stay motivated. My effort helps me reach my goals. These expressions help communicate determination clearly. Another key step toward fluency is learning to describe how learning English changes your perspective, because new languages often open new ways of thinking. For example, you might say, learning English expands my perspective. It allows me to understand different cultures. It helps me see the world differently. These reflections connect language learning with personal development. Let's practice describing perspective together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, learning English opens. Maybe something like, learning English opens new opportunities. Learning English opens communication. Learning English opens understanding. These expressions help communicate the value of language learning. Another powerful habit for fluency is learning to describe the joy of understanding, because understanding is one of the most satisfying moments in learning. For example, you might say, understanding a conversation feels rewarding. Recognizing a phrase brings satisfaction. These moments remind me why I continue. These reflections express positive learning experiences. Let's try a joy exercise together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, I enjoy the moment when. Maybe something like, I enjoy the moment when I understand clearly. I enjoy the moment when I remember a word. I enjoy the moment when I speak confidently. These expressions help communicate emotional satisfaction. Another important step toward fluency is learning to describe your vision for the future, because your goals guide your effort. For example, you might say, in the future, I see myself communicating confidently. I see myself sharing ideas clearly. I see myself enjoying conversations. These statements express hope and vision. Let's practice future vision together. Write 4 sentences beginning, or as with, in the future I see. Maybe something like, in the future I see myself speaking comfortably. In the future I see myself understanding easily. In the future I see myself communicating confidently. In the future, I see myself continuing to grow. These reflections strengthen your long-term motivation. Another helpful habit for fluency is reminding yourself that the learning process never truly ends, because language is always evolving and expanding. You might say, learning never stops. There is always something new to discover. Each step leads to another step. These reflections encourage lifelong curiosity. Let's finish this section with a final reflection exercise. Write 5 sentences describing the kind of English speaker you want to become. Maybe something like, I want to become a confident communicator. I want to express my ideas clearly. I want to listen and understand easily. I want to speak calmly and naturally. I want to continue learning throughout my life. These reflections connect language learning with personal identity. As you continue expressing ideas like these, day after day, sentence after sentence, you may begin to notice something truly powerful. English is no longer just something you practice. It becomes a language through which you understand your own thoughts, your goals, and your experiences. And when language reaches that level of connection, fluency is no longer something you chase. It becomes something you live. Let's continue reflecting together for a few more moments, because one of the most powerful ways to unlock English fluency is by realizing that fluency is already growing inside you every time you practice. Every sentence you say, every thought you express, every moment you try again. These small actions are quietly building your ability to communicate. Many learners spend a long time waiting for the day when they will suddenly feel fluent. But fluency rarely arrives as a sudden moment. Instead, it appears gradually, like a door opening slowly. One day you notice that you understand conversations more easily. Another day you realize that sentences come to your mind faster. And another day you notice that speaking feels less stressful than before. This gradual change is the natural result of consistent practice. When you repeat useful phrases, when you describe your daily life in English, when you share your thoughts and feelings, your brain begins to build stronger connections with the language. Think about the journey you have taken during this lesson. You practice describing your day, your thoughts, your feelings, your goals, your learning habits, and your progress. All of these expressions are part of real communication, and every time you use them, your fluency becomes stronger. You might pause for a moment now and reflect on your own learning journey. You might say something like, "My English is improving little by little. Each day I understand more. My confidence is growing." These reflections remind you that progress is always happening. Let's try a final reflection exercise together. Write 4 sentences beginning with "Step by step I am." Maybe something like, "Step by step I am improving my English. Step by step I am building confidence. Step by step I am understanding more. Step by step I am unlocking fluency." These sentences help you express the, yes, gradual nature of progress. Another important truth about fluency is that communication is not about perfection. It is about connection. When people speak with each other, they are not searching for perfect grammar. They are sharing ideas, emotions, and experiences. You might remember this idea during conversations. You might say, "My goal is to communicate clearly. My goal is to share ideas. My goal is to connect with people." These thoughts shift your focus from perfection to communication. Let's practice this idea together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, "My goal when I speak English is." Maybe something like, "My goal when I speak English is to express my ideas. My goal when I speak English is to communicate clearly. My goal when I speak English is to connect with people. These reflections help you understand the true purpose of language. Another helpful mindset for fluency is remembering that learning a language is similar to building a skill like playing music or learning a sport. At first, everything feels unfamiliar. Movements feel slow and progress feels small. But with regular practice, your ability becomes stronger and more natural. You might remind yourself of this idea by saying, practice turns effort into skill. Consistency creates improvement. Every attempt builds experience. These reflections strengthen your learning mindset. Let's try another small exercise together. Write 3 sentences beginning with every time I practice. Maybe something like, every time I practice, I become more confident. Every time I practice, I learn something new. Every time I practice, I move closer to fluency. These expressions help reinforce the importance of practice. Another important realization about fluency is that language grows through curiosity. When you stay curious about new expressions, new conversations, and new ideas, learning becomes more enjoyable. You might say something like, curiosity keeps learning interesting. New words bring new ideas. Every conversation teaches something. These reflections highlight the value of curiosity. Let's practice curiosity reflections together. Write 3 sentences beginning with I stay curious about. Maybe something like, I stay curious about new English expressions. I stay curious about how conversations flow. I stay curious about how people communicate. These sentences strengthen your learning mindset. Another powerful step toward fluency is learning to trust your own progress. Because confidence grows when you recognize the effort you have made. You might say, I trust my learning process. I believe in my progress. I know that practice is working. These simple statements reinforce confidence. Let's try a confidence exercise together. Write 4 sentences beginning with I believe. Maybe something like, I believe I can become fluent. I believe my effort matters. I believe practice brings progress. I believe my confidence will continue growing. These reflections help strengthen your belief in your ability. Another important skill for fluent communication is learning to stay calm while speaking, because calm thinking allows ideas to flow naturally. You might remind yourself, I can take my time when speaking. Clear ideas matter more than speed. Communication grows through patience. These thoughts help you relax during conversations. Let's practice calm thinking together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, when I speak English, I stay. Maybe something like, when I speak English, I stay calm. When I speak English, I stay patient. When I speak English, I stay focused on my ideas. These reflections support a confident speaking mindset. Another helpful habit for fluency is learning to imagine future conversations, because visualization prepares your brain for real communication. You might imagine yourself speaking with someone and saying, "It's nice to share ideas with you. I enjoy learning through conversation." Communication helps us understand each other. These imagined moments strengthen your readiness to speak. Let's try a visualization exercise together. Write 4 sentences beginning with, I imagine myself. Maybe something like, I imagine myself speaking confidently. I imagine myself understanding conversations easily. I imagine myself sharing ideas clearly. I imagine myself enjoying English communication. These sentences strengthen your vision of fluency. Another important realization is that fluency does not mean knowing every word. Even fluent speakers sometimes forget words or pause while speaking. What makes them fluent is their ability to continue communicating, to explain ideas, and to stay engaged in the conversation. You might remind yourself, communication is flexible. Ideas can be explained in many ways. Fluency grows through expression. These reflections help remove fear from speaking. Let's practice flexible thinking together. Write 3 sentences beginning with, if I forget a word. Maybe something like, if I forget a word, I explain the idea. If I forget a word, I stay calm. If I forget a word, I continue speaking. These expressions help maintain confidence during conversations. As we reach the end of this lesson, take a moment to recognize the effort you have made. Every exercise, every reflection, every sentence you created has helped strengthen your ability to express ideas in English. You might reflect on this moment by saying, I practiced expressing my thoughts. I explored many useful sentence patterns. I strengthened my fluency step by step. These reflections help you appreciate your progress. Let's do one final reflection exercise together. Write 5 sentences beginning with, from today I will. Maybe something like, from today I will practice regularly. From today I will speak with confidence. From today I will stay patient. From today I will continue. Learning. From today I will keep unlocking my English fluency. These statements create a strong intention for your future learning. Fluency grows through daily effort, through curiosity, through patience, and through the courage to express your ideas even when you are still learning. Every time you speak, you strengthen your voice in the language. Every time you listen, you deepen your understanding. Every time you practice, you move one step closer to the fluent communicator you are becoming. Thank you so much for spending this time learning English with me today. I truly appreciate your dedication and your effort to improve. The fact that you stayed here, listened carefully, practiced the exercises, and reflected on your own ideas shows something very important. You are serious about unlocking your English fluency. Remember, fluency does not come from a single lesson. It grows through small daily practice, through patience, through curiosity, and through the courage to keep expressing your ideas even when you are still learning. Every sentence you speak, every phrase you repeat, every moment you choose to practice is another step forward in your journey. So keep going, keep listening, keep speaking, and most importantly, keep believing in your progress. Because step by step, word by word, conversation by conversation, your English fluency will continue to grow stronger. If you enjoyed practicing English in this lesson, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell notification so you never miss our daily English practice videos. Each new lesson will give you more opportunities to listen, think, and speak with confidence. Thank you again for learning with me today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson. Until then, keep practicing Stay patient and keep unlocking your English fluency.